But what they'll do is they'll climb up these blades of grass. You always see them on a picture of a blade of grass, and they'll sit there and they'll quest. They call it questing. They put their arms out like this and they just freeze, and they sit there and wait for someone to come by. And then it gets to where they're completely paralyzed, and I've seen dogs are just laid out flat, and the only they can move their eyes. They're looking around the room and they're like, help me, I'm trapped in here, I can't move my body. Well, hey everybody, it's good to be back, and we're live again, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about ticks. Ticks can cause lots of diseases. Fleas are ugly and gross, and they crawl around and you see them jumping off your dog and they're gross, but ticks carry lots of deadly diseases. Ticks are bad, and ticks are harder to kill than fleas are. So I'd like to thank Dr. Wakeham from SIVA. He came and did an in-house talk for us, and he gave us an education on ticks, and he let me have some of his slides here. So I wanted to show you a couple things. There's several different types of ticks in our area, and it's an interesting thing that lately, in the last several years, there's been more ticks and different types of ticks in our area. And also, they spread more diseases, or maybe they don't spread more diseases than they used to, or we just discovered that they spread more diseases than we thought they did. So the first tick we want to cover here is the brown dog tick, this rhiphencephalus tick. It is all over the United States. This is the scary thing about this tick is it can live in the house. It can get in your air conditioning ducts, and it can set up shop, and it can live there, and it can reproduce there, so it can reproduce year-round. And sometimes these tick infestations in people's houses can be very difficult to get rid of. So these are some of the diseases that he can carry, this tick: ehrlichiosis, anaplasmosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, babesiosis, hepatozoonosis, bartonellosis. So there's some of these things are transmissible to people as well as dogs. So we don't want the dogs coming in the house and getting on us, because they can transmit disease to us just like they can to our pets. Ehrlichiosis, for example, there's a dog Ehrlichia and there's a Ehrlichia for humans, and so different species and different things that they can transmit. So your dog might have a tick that is perfectly harmless to him. It won't hurt the dog. Maybe it doesn't carry any diseases that the dog can get, but it carries diseases that people can get. So that's something that we can do, is we can control the ticks in our environment, in our yard, on our pets. So let's go to the next one. We have the American dog tick. You see west of the mountains, or east of the mountains here, that covers Virginia. And it can cause Rocky Mountain spotted fever. You may have known some people. I've seen fewer cases of Lyme disease, but we've seen more recently. We've seen more cases of Lyme disease, but we see fewer than that of Rocky Mountain spotted fever in people. But you can get tick paralysis, tularemia, or ehrlichiosis again. So several different diseases can be spread by different ticks. So getting all the ticks off is important. This tick paralysis is a very interesting disease. Is that you can have one tick on a dog, and it secretes a special toxin that goes to the nervous system and causes the dog to be completely paralyzed. And it becomes a progressive paralysis. So they start real weak and wobbly in the rear end, and people don't know what's happened, or they've been hit by a car, or what's been going on, and it gets progressively worse to the front end, and then they get to where they're kind of swimming. They can move their legs a little bit, but they don't have control of them, and then it gets to where they're completely paralyzed. And I've seen dogs are just laid out flat, and the only they can move their eyes. They're looking around the room, and they're like, help me, I'm trapped in here, I can't move my body. Well, we remove the ticks from them, and the next morning they'll be up and walking. It's just an incredibly interesting thing. So that's, if you take a look at this tick, American dog tick, and then they all kind of look the same. It's this is really blown up. This is on a blade of grass, and when they're very big, you might be able to see a difference there, but it's difficult in real life to differentiate these ticks. The other thing is that a tick is not like a flea. A flea is an insect. A flea goes through the complex life cycle we studied with butterflies. It's like a flea makes a little cocoon like a butterfly, and it hatches out of that cocoon and becomes a flea. It starts as a little larvae, makes the cocoon, turns into a flea. And the flea actually has vestigial wings, just like a butterfly would, but his wings don't work. So they have a big hopping legs. They really hop. Ticks are different. They're acarids. They're not insects, and so they have a larval, nymph, and adult stage. So they have basically all the stages look like teeny tiny ticks, and some of them are just very, very small, just like a little speck. It's hard to even see them when you have one in a petri dish and you're looking at it. If you take that thing and lay it up against your skin, it just blends right in with the freckles and the hairs, and you wouldn't even notice it. So different diseases can be transmitted by different stages of the tick. Sometimes the immature, tiny ticks can transmit disease. Rocky Mountain spotted fever here, tick paralysis, and tularemia. Again, this is up in the northwest, so this is the Rocky Mountain tick. And we go to the black-legged tick. This is one you've heard a lot about. So you can see he's got the black legs and the scutum here is black, where this is more of a brown tick. And this is the one that transmits Lyme disease. This is this Ixodes scapularis. So there's Ixodes ticks of different types. There's an Ixodes tick that's in Europe that transmits Lyme disease, but it's a slightly different tick. So they have different outbreaks of Lyme disease because of that. So Lyme disease, anaplasmosis, ehrlichiosis. We see a lot of ehrlichiosis in our practice. That when we do our heartworm test, it tests for 3 different tick-borne diseases. It tests for Ehrlichia, Lyme, and anaplasmosis, as well as heartworms. So we do that every year as a routine testing, and we found a lot of ehrlichiosis. This one, here's the western black-legged tick. You can see Ixodes instead of scapularis. This is Ixodes pacifica. And so it does Lyme and anaplasmosis. But he's a black-legged tick. Let's see if we can tell the difference between the pacificus version. There's scapularis. There's pacificus. I don't know. It looks like his little mouth parts. This guy's mouth parts are closed right now, and this guy's mouth parts are open, so they look a little different. He might be a little closer up, so it's hard to tell. So let's take a look at the Lone Star tick. Is probably the most common tick that we see in this area. Maybe it's the most common, or maybe it's the easiest one to identify. You see the little white spot on their back, and you're like, that's the Lone Star tick. And they transmit a lot of ehrlichiosis so we suspect that, but also rickettsiosis, cytoxoinosis that cats can get, tularemia, other diseases that humans can get as well. This is the Gulf Coast tick. So see where it's borderline here. Is it in Danville or not according to this map? But this is all from the CDC, because these are for zoonotic diseases that are this Center for Disease Control for human doctors is concerned about zoonotic diseases. And zoonotic diseases are diseases that are transmitted from animals to humans. So this is all data that come from human medicine. There's also another website is really neat to look at if anybody's interested, is the CAPC, Companion Animal Parasite Council. And they collect data on companion animals, our pets, and different parasites that have been diagnosed. All veterinary clinics, not all veterinary clinics, but a lot of them volunteer their information from their laboratory equipment so they can compile these databases and tell us where the ticks are and where the diseases are being transmitted. This last tick is the Asian longhorn tick. This is a scary thing because we don't really know much about it. And the scary thing is that it is an invasive species. It comes from Asia, and it has come over here, and it's started to take over. There was an article in the news recently, a couple months ago, in North Carolina, where some baby calves got infested with such a number of these ticks that they actually drank so much of their blood that the calves died from it. So these ticks can be scary, and this is the species that they found these ticks on, so they get on a dog. They found a lot of them out in the environment just searching for them. There's people who do these tick studies. They do these tick drags, we call them. They take a big white sheet and they drag it across a field where they know there might be ticks, and then they collect all the ticks, and then they kill them and preserve them, and they go through them one by one and they identify them and count them and see what proportion of what type of ticks are there. So, and you can see it's opossums, cows, goats, horses, all kinds of animals, white-tailed deer. This is the Asian longhorn tick. And so it's a native to Eastern Asia, and it's invasive in Australia and New Zealand, and now it's been discovered in the U.S. just in 2017. But what they'll do is they'll climb up these blades of grass. You always see them on a picture of a blade of grass, and they'll sit there and they'll quest. They call it questing. They put their arms out like this, and they just freeze, and they sit there and wait for someone to come by. And when they sense the CO2 in the air of an animal breathing or a person breathing, they sense the vibrations and they feel your heat, they grab on and they actually crawl up your legs and find a place to attach. So these immature stages of the tick will get on, say, a rodent, and then they'll fall off, and then they'll molt into a larger stage of a tick, and then they'll get on another animal. So it depends on this. This animal prefers 3 different hosts, and we don't know exactly in America how that's going to work out and what's going to be. And we don't know exactly what diseases he's going to be able to transmit. It's a parthenogenic reproduction, which is interesting, where there is no male or female, or a male can become female and a female can become male, and they can reproduce without the other sex. So we have a broad host range. It prefers cattle and sheep and horses, but it's going to get on whatever it can when it's hungry. So it's considered a biting nuisance right now. It causes damage and irritation, and in livestock, apparently, if you get too many of them, they do drink the blood. It can cause a problem, and it is a vector. It can be the host that transmits a number of diseases. So this is the scary thing about ticks, that they carry lots of different diseases, and we don't know exactly what diseases these ticks carry in every case. So we want to keep rid of ticks. And there's a couple different options for treating your pets with ticks. One is an all-natural way, is that ticks like to live in, they like to lay their eggs in leaf litter and mulch and nice underbrush kind of thing like that. If you can eliminate that from your dog's area, if you have a fenced-in yard and you have the decorative bushes around with mulch and leaf litter underneath, or you have woods along the edge, if you can limit your dogs and keep them from going out in the woods, you're going to limit their exposure to ticks quite a bit. If you have full sun in the grass, you have short clipped grass in full sun, it's going to dry out a lot of those ticks, and the ticks are not going to lay their eggs there, and you're going to have a cleaner, safer environment. If that's not possible, then you talk about a couple different products. So we can use an oral tick preventative, like Bravecto is a little chewable they take, and you give it to your dog, and it'll protect them for 3 months. And it doesn't wash off because it's taken internally, and it stays in their system and circulates for 3 months. And the other option, like Frontline, is a topical product where you're putting an actual drops on the back of their neck, and it spreads over their skin, and it coats their body, and it stays on there for a month until it washes off or wears off. And that's another way to treat the ticks. So some people don't want to give their dog a medicine by mouth. Some people don't want that pesticide on their back and them coming in the house. There's also some flea and tick collars, and ticks are really difficult to kill, and some of those collars are good and some of them are not so great. So give us a call if you have any questions about that kind of thing and preventive. And if you haven't had your dog tested for any of these diseases, now's a good time. We take 3 drops of blood, and we can find out in 15 minutes if they're infected with some of the most common tick diseases. So if you have any comments, please comment below, and I will get back with you on that, or give us a call at the clinic, 836-2499, and I'll see you next week on Facebook Live. Thanks for listening.